So, Renee, I would love to just read a little bit of your bio, if you don't mind, so that we can let everyone know who you are. And then we're just going to dive right into what you can share with us about anxiety. Does that work?
Let's do it. I'm excited. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Renee is a pioneer in merging technology with child psychology. I love this fact about you. She is one of less than 400 people in the entire world to hold a master's degree in applied positive psychology, which is known as the science of happiness. How cool is that? Like a doctor of the science of happiness, less than 400 people in the world. She is the founder and chief storyteller of GoZen.com, and she teaches kids the valuable skill of resilience. I'm imagining, Renee, that resilience is probably the almost opposite end of the spectrum, if you will, or kind of opposite viewpoint of anxiety. Can you tell me, is that even remotely on the same field of thinking for you? Tell me your feelings about how anxiety interacts with resilience.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think the work that you guys are doing is so needed and so beautiful. I would be remiss without starting by saying thank you.
You're
I am
welcome.
honored to be here. Yeah, so is there a yin and yang with anxiety and resilience? Absolutely. You know, a lot of people will ask me what anxiety is, where does it come from? How can 1 in 3 kids by the age of 18 be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder? What
Mhm.
is going on, right? And there are lots of technical definitions of anxiety, but for me, it really is unprocessed feelings, especially of fear and worry, right? And so anxiety comes from when we are not able to connect with our strong inner voice. And is it the opposite of resilience? Well, we are born with a wellspring of resilience. We can look to really typical examples of when our kids are first learning to walk. And I know that you guys have never met a kid who, is able to walk, came into the world with both legs and didn't want to master that skill and didn't fall down hundreds of times. They never get back up and say, you know what? I'm just not going to do this walking thing. I think I'm just going to sit on my butt for the rest of my life. We are born with that superpower, right? It is within us. And so it gets covered up by unprocessed feelings. So yeah, they're kind of, flip sides of the same coin, you could say, opposite ends of a particular spectrum. But I really feel that anxiety is just a bunch of unprocessed feelings.
Mm. I would love to hear from you because I think that your personal story is quite powerful. Do you mind just diving into that for a moment, and then
Yeah,
we'll weave it into the philosophy and the modern day narrative,
yeah.
of what's happening right now. But I think it's important for people to know your personal story.
Yeah, you know what? I was a really anxious kid. I just was. I came, I can remember about 7 or 8 years old, I would ask my mom hundreds of what if questions. What if no one sits next to me on the bus? What if no one sits next to me at lunch? What if I get a bad grade on the test? What if? My what ifs went on forever. And she would continually try to reassure me. My parents are amazing, loving, compassionate, but the reassurance just went over my head. It appeased me for about a minute. And what I started to realize is that not only was I suffering inside, but I was making my parents suffer. My parents were suffering because they felt helpless. They did not know what to do to ease my pain. So I did what I think is one of the scariest things that kids do. I see kids that I work with do this. I myself did this. I grew up in the 80s, so it was a big Star Wars time. And so I would imagine myself in a force shield, but it was a feelings force shield. So I didn't want any feelings coming in or out, no bad feelings. I basically just started to pretend like everything was okay. So when my mom would ask me, well, what's going on? You're not talking a lot about being worried anymore. I would say, oh, it's fine. Oh, tests at school? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. But the very interesting thing that I now know in retrospect from the research about numbing your feelings is that you cannot separate the bad and the good. You cannot separate the negative and the positive. If you numb your feelings, you're numbing the entire spectrum of your humanity. And so I got to the
Can you
point.
repeat that again?
Yeah,
That is really, that is such a juicy piece of wisdom for people. Do you mind sharing that again, Renee?
if you numb your feelings, you are numbing the entire spectrum of feelings that is part of your humanity. So we have really polarized feelings. We have really put things in a black and white way. This feeling is bad, this feeling is good. And so when you numb feelings, you cannot choose. You numb them all. That's what happens, right? Suppression of emotions. And I feel like this is where a lot of issues come from. So I suppress, but this is what happens, right? When you hold the feelings inside for that long and pretend like they don't exist, eventually your body shuts you down. So in my mid 20s, I started having these massive, what I thought was a heart attack, right? The first time I had it, I legitimately thought, this is it. This is the end of my life. I fell on the bathroom floor. I was in my office at work and I ran myself to the emergency room. And the doctor looked at me and I said, I'm having a heart attack. You need to do whatever you need to do. And he said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 24. And he said, okay, I'm going to run the test, but you are not having a heart attack. And he came back and he said, listen, you had a massive anxiety attack, a massive panic attack, and you need to change your life. And, I don't know if my parents would have put me in therapy if we couldn't afford it, when I was growing up. I don't know if they would have done it in any case. But the biggest blessing of my life was that day when that doctor was like, you need to change your life. Because I got into therapy and I'm lying in the therapist's office, on the sofa and having these huge aha moments because he's teaching me cognitive behavioral skills. He's pulling things from mindfulness. He's pulling things from positive psychology. He's pulling things from neuroscience. And I'm like, hi, why couldn't the 8-year-old version of Renee learned this? Because every kid is capable. Every child is capable of learning skills of resilience. So at that time, I had a degree in finance. I was running a technology company. I was like, this is it. I've had that aha moment. I am changing my life. And so ended up selling the company, becoming a life coach, going to the University of Pennsylvania and getting that master's in positive psychology and really creating programs that I wish I had when I was a kid. And so that is the origin of Go Zen, the company that I run, and my origin story.
So I left myself on mute. Thank you so much
I'm like,
for
you're
sharing
speechless.
that. Yeah, I am so and I am. But I have you share your origin story because I feel like there's something really special when people's essence is so intertwined into the work that they do. I really truly feel with you that your heart is walking very much along with your beautiful and very intelligent mind, that has been a catalyst to really help you build the tech part of Go Zen. So I would love for you to share just about Go Zen in general, because I think that there are a lot of things that we can weave in from this technology and from the understanding that you've already gained in your many, 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 many years of now working with children in anxiety and how that can be directly applied to these times.
When I was growing up, my parents had a very complex route to help me learn some skills of resilience. First of all, I want to repeat that line, skills of resilience, because a lot of us really don't understand that it is a skill. Sure, many of us come into the world with a particular set of raw materials. Some of us are more resilient than others. There are some genetic factors, there's some environmental factors, but this is a learned skill. And so what my parents were trying to do is they would buy books in the 80s, they would buy psychology books and education books, and they would read the books, and then they would try to translate it to me and make it engaging for me in kids speak. And there was so much lost in translation. What I know of kids is they are actually extremely sophisticated and they want to learn. You know, every human actually wants to learn and master their skills. They come in with a love of learning. You just have to speak their language. And so our goal with GoZen was to create engaging media. We use cartoons, we use games, we use worksheets, we use interactive things so that kids learn these skills, and we use a lot of humor. but they're engaging to them. So parents say to us, well, how do I teach my kids these skills? You know, skills of resilience, skills of well-being, skills of motivation, skills of grit. And I say, you just push play, push play and allow them to engage with the content, allow them to see themselves and their situations with homework and school and now remote learning and, peer pressure. Allow them to see themselves in these videos and allow them to learn, and sure, facilitate and go along with them. But really it goes on, we create these programs that are engaging for kids to learn skills of resilience.
That's so beautiful. And I want to make a couple comments to that. First of all, for everyone on Facebook, obviously do this in the comment section. And for those of you on Zoom, just in the chat box, just type yes if you know that your child is a learner. Because I think this is very important. Sometimes we just think either someone has it or they don't have it. And what you're proposing is that this can actually be something that is a learned skill that the younger the children know, they can take it with them for a lifetime. For instance, here, I feel like I had a life-given opportunity to cultivate very deep resilience with the 3 near-death experiences that I went through, including the massive brain surgery and facial paralysis that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. And I share this because I think a lot of people in life feel that you have to wait for moments like that in order to discover certain parts of your character or in order to develop certain skills. And I propose, even as someone who has been more of the survivor type, who has actually learned my resilience through those means of really intense, situations that really were a life or death. What you're proposing, Renee, is that people don't have to wait to go through something like that. You can actually start building the child's resilience toolbox at an early age with education like GoZen. So just tell us a little bit about how that works. And then also some of the techniques that you might use in GoZen that people can do at home without that technology per se.
Yeah,
and then of course,
absolutely.
Everyone, please sign up for gozen.com because it's awesome.
Thank you. So, I think it's really insightful for us to talk about it in this way, that we have been reactionary when it comes to lots of disease, right? So it probably took us a long time to figure out that we should start going to the gym before we see diabetes, right? That we should start taking vitamins before, or supplements or whatever, that we should be preventative. But for some reason, this has not sunk in when it comes to mental wellness. We believe that we need to wait until someone is anxious, until someone is depressed, until someone is, insert the labels that we've given these things until they're in this experience to actually help them. What we know is, especially with the trends that we're seeing, the only way to actually prevent and change the trajectory for this generation with mental health is prevention. We have to teach these skills in advance. They have to be embedded in our schools, and they are and they go hand in hand with all of the other goals that we may have. We want our kids to be happy. We want them to be successful. We want them, to do well academically. I mean, I am not saying that we shouldn't do all of those things. I mean, heck, I'm Indian. My parents are Indian immigrants. My dad used to make me extra math homework. Like, I know about academics, okay? So, but these social and emotional learning skills go hand in hand with all of our other goals for kids, and is absolutely essential that we make it preventative and we teach them early now. So you were asking about techniques. Is there anything specific?
I have a couple questions about that, because
ahead.
You would know, as an educator, a lot more about this than myself and anybody else on the call. So I'm assuming that with the current educational system, as we know it, more the mainstream educational system, there probably are not integrative conversations, around resilience. So probably you're suggesting that this is something that we as parents would need to be responsible for, introducing these resilient skills into our kids' life. What would be the earliest age that we would introduce them, and how would we introduce the resilient skills?
Yeah, so the earliest age, 2, 3 years old, we start to talk to kids about their feelings and using their words, right? This is a emotional education that starts very early. So what we know is the average adult, I still can't believe this statistic, can only name 3 emotions, happy, sad, and angry. That is, and then, we start to get lost in that vocabulary. So developing a lexicon for our kids very early is super important. Every emotional intelligence educator will tell you that being able to name an emotion, per Dan Siegel's work, will help tame the emotion, right? That jealousy is very different than sadness, for example. So we can start this education extremely early, right? And we do it in different ways. We meet the kids where they are at. And I think this needs to be a very holistic thing. We need to get it into education systems. We need to start as parents to do it at home. We need to have conversations about it. So as 360 degree as we can get this, it's very, very important. But let's say that our schools are like, hey, we work with a lot of schools at GoZen. So we have thousands of schools that are implementing the program, and a lot of people will come up with resistance and say, you know what, I don't really have time to teach this because I have to teach math and I have to teach English and I have to teach the core subjects. But the research is in our favor already. Kids who take social and emotional learning curricula, wherever they take it, they do better in school. So give me 10 to 15 minutes from your math lesson, give me 10 to 15 minutes from your English lesson, and not only will we give you more socially and emotionally adjusted kids, you're going to get better scores. I think that the research shows 11 points higher on standardized testing if that's something that's important to someone, right? So these
I
things
believe
go
it.
hand in hand. They go hand in
Yeah,
hand.
I absolutely believe that, because resilience, it's going to boost you, and it's a leadership quality. It's a self-motivating leadership quality that's going to translate, to positivity, really, in all areas of life. So maybe walk us through, Renee, because I think actually, if you guys can share with me, if you don't mind, in the chat box, how old are your kids? I'm sure one of you only have one child. I'm sure many have multiple children, but just let's get an idea for, okay, here we go. 5, 7, 8, 14, 1 and almost 4, 10, 3, 15 months,
Thoughts?
17, 20. Okay. So we have really, the full spectrum here. And for sure, all of the parents today have shown up because they know, that there is probably a more empowering and engaging way that they can be communicating with their child, about their child's anxiety. So is it possible to maybe walk us through, some of the age ranges and some guidance that you might have? And of course, everyone, I am definitely going to be going into your personal questions as well in the Q&A box in about 15 minutes from now. So please, in the chat box, just share if there's anything specific that you want me to weave into this part of the training with Renee.
So, I think it's fortunate for us that a few years ago, a movie came out called Inside Out. It is an animated movie. It won the Academy Award for Best Animation.
And
And so
somebody mentioned that earlier in the chat box.
awesome. So a lot of people have seen this movie. If you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it, but it's not necessary to understand the techniques. What they do in this movie, which has been done, it wasn't an original idea, just so you guys know, but it was a great way to represent it. But they personified emotions with different characters, right? So there's joy and there's sadness and there's anger and I think there's grief, or I can't remember all of them. But they're essentially taking an emotion and making it a character, which is extremely important at any age to do, right? I actually recommend to everyone I work with, regardless of age, this is age agnostic, that they create a character for every emotion that they have, especially the ones that are coming up over and over again. And here is why. Anxiety particularly likes to tell lies, okay? It can be useful. It's not a bad guy, but it tells a few lies. The first lie that anxiety likes to tell is that the worst is going to happen, right? Catastrophic thinking. the absolute worst is going to happen. And everything that happens that creates worry gets taken to its logical worst end. Usually for parents, this ends up in homelessness, drug abuse, as in my kids are going to end up homeless. Like, so, oh, they got a bad grade. Oh my goodness, they're not going to get into a good college. Oh my goodness, they're not going to get a good job. Oh my goodness, they're going to end up homeless, right? So the worst is going to happen is a big lie that gets told by anxiety. And the second lie is this is going to last forever. There is permanence in this. Yeah. So what does it do when we create a character for our kids? First of all, it diffuses this feeling from their identity, who they are. Because a lot of kids that feel anxious, I know because I grew up this way, they fuse their identity with a feeling. And so they start to say, I'm just a worrier. And even our parents might say, well, he or she, they're just worriers, they just came into the world like that. They're just worriers. And so what happens when we fuse our identity with it is we're not able to actually extract, externalize, and work on the problem. When we create a character, it takes this thing out of our identity, because our identity, our essence, is not our feelings. Have you ever had a feeling that's lasted forever? Renee, have you ever had a feeling that's lasted forever? Have you ever been happy forever? Have you ever been worried forever?
Nope.
Okay, emotions.
Nope. But I have definitely had
like
that anxiety. Definitely, for sure. Every time that I speak on a stage, I am absolutely passing out.
Okay, so this is a great example, right? So you're absolutely passing out when you're going to speak on a stage or you're public speaking. So here's the thing about anxiety. We create a character out of it. And what we know about this character is it tells us some lies. So we want to be able to talk to the character. In the Gozen programs, we have this Whittle the worrier character, and the kids learn to talk to Whittle, to talk to their worry. So it's an externalized thing. And you get to, what you're doing is you're disputing your inaccurate thoughts, right? So instead of your parents saying, well, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, Renee, don't worry, you're going to be fine. You start to talk to your worry. It has a lot more power. The other thing that we teach kids is that, listen, worry has many different messages to send. Most of what's put out there, especially if you're just skimming articles or reading like one psych book or article here and there, is we hear this worry or anxiety causes the fight, flight, or freeze response. Oh my goodness, my body's freaking out. What I was talking about earlier when I was having panic attacks. That is a response that worry can cause, and a lot of times the alarm is set off at the wrong time. But you know what it can also do, Renee, when you're speaking on stage, when you have to give a speech, it can help you in that moment. Reframing worry. So we teach kids based on research to reframe their worry when they're in a performance situation, when you have to take a test, when you have to go bungee jumping, when you have to give a speech. Reframing it actually changes the way that it reacts in your body. So if you went up on stage, instead of trying to calm down, because a lot of us are trying to calm our kids down all the time, calm down and do some deep breathing and relax, you actually use that stress to your advantage. Yeah. You're not trying to get rid of the stress. This is a massive misunderstanding. We're not actually trying to get rid of the worry. And it's a huge relief to kids who are worriers. What do you mean I don't have to get rid of it? No, it's part of who you are. It's part of your humanity. It actually is very useful in many, many cases. Why would you want to get rid of it?
Well, let's unravel. Can we unpack
relationship
that?
with it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a great thing to unpack. 2 comments on that. Absolutely. Because actually what I do when I get on stage is I share with people how I am feeling. My heart rate is, I actually bring it onto stage with me, and it diffuses as I'm not in denial about it. And it actually simultaneously creates more of a bond with people, because I'm just being very transparent about what's going on. But what's interesting about that, the thing that I was proposing to unpack, is I think that a lot of us parents don't know what to do when we feel that we are presented with our kids, worry or anxiety, so we want it to go away.
Yes, because we're totally uncomfortable with the fact that our kid is uncomfortable, because we've made all we've made a particular set of feelings bad. We've villainized them. So we need to get rid of this idea. It's not the feeling that's the problem. It's our reaction to the feeling. It's our relationship with the feeling. And I'm not trying to be esoteric. I'm being very practical. And little kids understand this. They actually are doing emotions right. If you got, so I have a 6 and a 7-year-old myself, right? So I really have an intimate understanding of little ones. They go through feelings very quickly, right? My 6 and 7-year-old can be fighting, and then 2 seconds later, they're best friends. If you guys have ever experienced that, the reason is because the emotion is meant to come into your system, send you a message. It's a data point, and then leave. It doesn't actually want to stay here. It wants to exit. It's trying to send you a message, right? So the stress is saying, hey, Renee, you're about to go on stage. I'm going to help motivate you right now. That's the message it's trying to send. So it's super important for us to teach our kids that the feelings aren't bad, because we've done a lot of things, especially with things like anger. We've villainized these emotions, and we're like, listen, why don't you go to your timeout or go to your time in, because I'm more conscious and I made a calm down corner for you. But what I'm really saying to you is those set of emotions, they're not acceptable to society. So anger, negativity, sadness, anxiety, all that stuff, make it go away and come back when you're happy, joyful, cheerful, and grateful. So when you were saying, we don't know what to do when our kids are feeling anxious, yeah, because we've been trained to be uncomfortable with our feelings. So when we see it in our kids, we're just trying to make it go away. How do we get rid of it as quickly as possible?
Right.
We can't quash it. We have to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. And it's a family healing system. This is kind of piggybacks on what Dr. Nicole was sharing in her episode on Wednesday about screen time. Parents are afraid to see their children be bored or not have something there in front of them. And she proposes that that's actually the time when their imagination and their creativity is building. So then it comes down to, how are we getting ourselves comfortable with that it's okay for our kids to be bored? So a couple different things about this, Renee, and gosh, there's so much to talk about, guys, but don't worry, we have an entire other hour of left in the call. So, bear with us as we go through and kind of deconstruct and unravel all of this, because as we can see, it's not just about my kid has worry or my kid has anxiety. There are all these other things that are woven into it that we kind of need to take apart, and that we as parents need to get accountable for as well. So going back to the reframing the emotion for our children. So you're sharing about the role playing, which to me sounds like that's in probably like the toddler to give kind of like an age range, on the role playing. And doing the role playing, is that in and of itself reframing the emotion, because the children are diffusing some of the energy around it and getting their own guidance with the emotion? Is that what happens?
Yeah, so this can be used for any age range when it comes to reframing stress and anxiety, especially in a performance situation. So I don't know if I mentioned role playing, but you brought it up, so I think that's awesome. So this can be done in role play before things actually happen, so that when they are in a situation where they are performing, they can actually use the reappraisal or the reframing. They remember, right? You're able to actually remember the technique, because 50% of the problem is you learn the coping skill and then you're like, wait, what was I supposed to do? My brain's been hijacked. I don't remember. So you can use that reframing really at age 5 and up for sure. And the one key phrase that you can teach your kids is to say, I am excited. Alison Wood Brooks is the researcher out of Harvard that did all of this research on reappraisal, did a lot of the research on reappraisal. And that's the phrase that kids can learn, right? That they can say. It's easy to remember. It's 3 words. Stress and excitement are physiologically very close. You can jump from one to the other. So it can be used, yeah. And in terms of role playing, I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's a thing that we hear about, but we just don't do as parents. It's like, who has time to role play? I barely have time to feed myself, especially in this environment.
Yeah.
But role playing is so important when it comes to practicing how we're going to use our skills when we're in the moment.
And
Did
can
that
you
answer
give
your
us an
question?
example of what exactly that would look like? the
what
role
exactly?
playing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're role playing, you can do a few different things. So we talked about talking to worry, right? So
Mhm.
one of you, a parent or a caretaker, can be the worry character, and then your child can be themselves, right? And you want to teach your child to talk to their worry. So it's like, so the worry will say, so you're the worry, right? So you're saying to your kid, oh my goodness, this is, you're going to be do horribly on your test, you're going to be staying up all night before, you're not going to get enough sleep. And then you're teaching the kid to talk back, you know what, and name the worry. So give it a name. Again, and goes on, we call it Whittle the Worrier. You can call the worry whatever you want. You can call it Joe if you want to. Listen, Joe, I know you're trying to protect me and everything, but you're overreacting. So the role play will actually look like talking back and forth to the worry. Now, if you want to do a role play about a situation like going on stage, then set the stage, right? In your living room, create a stage and say, tomorrow I have to go on stage. I'm going to have the microphone in hand, and have your child actually go and do this thing. And if they're not actually feeling worried because they're in their house and they're comfortable, then make them do something that will mimic the physiological symptoms. Like, so if the heart is racing, have them run in place for 10 minutes, right? And then all of a sudden their heart is racing. And so that they can do this role play. And when they're about to go up and give their speech and their heart is racing, they can say to themselves, I would say to myself, okay, Renee, my heart is racing, but it's preparing me for this challenge. It's helping me rise to the occasion. I'm excited. So I'm not doing something like trying to calm myself down or being afraid of how I feel. Because a lot of what keeps us in a vicious cycle of anxiety is literally fear of the fear response. It's fear of fear. Your body is going through something it can handle. What you want to teach your kids is that they are safe, because a lot of times when we're feeling those jittery feelings, our palms are sweating, our throat is dry, it feels unsafe. Something dangerous is happening. So what you want to reinforce is safety. You are safe. Your body is safe. Guess what? Your heart races when you run, when you take a jog. You sweat and you get uncomfortable when you watch a horror movie. When you go on a roller coaster, you have all the same symptoms. Your body can take this. Your body is built to take this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're getting a lot of people. The fear of the fear is spot on. Yes. The fear of the fear, that one, that can really get the spiral going. last time I did this, XYZ happened. So that means that next time XYZ is going to happen. And then it creates, the panic attack, if you will.
Yes.
So for the person, there was someone who shared back here, oh goodness. Sorry, guys. The chat box is moving really fast. So with some of them, I'm just remembering what the person is writing. So I'm sorry, I don't have your name here. But someone commented that for them, they go out on stage and they just entirely freeze, as in can't say a word whatsoever. So to just use her as an example with how she might be able to role play, it's actually setting up the stage, if you will, kind of in your front room or wherever feels good for you, and walking out there in embodying that, embodying the not being able to talk, and then witnessing what feelings about the feelings are coming up, and talking yourself through that and reminding you that you are safe.
Yes, absolutely.
That I am safe. I am grounded. Maybe if I'm not able to talk right now through my mouth, I'll take some of the pressure and energy off there. Maybe I'll focus on my feet being connected to the ground. Okay, my feet are making me feel stable standing here, so I'm safe. This is kind of it, this is how you reframe things from your nervous system so that you can start having a different experience. And also, there's an element to this that sometimes it's not going to automatically shift. And often it takes playing with it and continuing to be present to the uncomfortable feelings, but taking action anyways. And then seeing how you can actually get through to the other side and using that as feedback of, oh, okay, I am more resilient than what I thought. I was able to do that. Maybe it was still somewhat uncomfortable, but maybe next time it will be less uncomfortable. Is
I
that
think
is that what you're
yes.
saying?
So I think as long as the goal is not getting rid of, managing, eliminating, right? We are so good at denying, quashing, ignoring, running away from what we're feeling. We're awesome at it, right? We have so many different distraction techniques, and that elimination only reinforces the anxiety the next time, right? So if you are doing this technique not to get rid of, but to transform what you are feeling into a positive catalyst for change, then awesome. And once in a while, distraction is fine. Sometimes it's so overwhelming and we can't teach ourselves in the moment and we haven't practiced enough and we can't do it and we need to walk away and we need to distract, and that's okay, right? Distraction has its purpose. But if the technique that you are using is used to actually face what you are feeling and embrace what you are feeling. I know that can sound, what? Why would I want to embrace it? Yes, you do. Because inside of that feeling that you thought was so bad is power. There's a
Yes.
lot of power in worry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love this so much. You are just speaking my language, because when you take the ownership of it, you can then take the energy back of it, and then you can do what you will. I remember one of the things that my surgeon told me after I had brain surgery, when they said zero medical chance that you're going to heal your facial nerve. My facial nerve was actually completely detached. So they're like, sorry. They weren't trying to be negative, towards me or my condition, but just for them, the medical fact of the matter is this isn't going to happen. But I looked at them and said, I don't care. And I understand that you feel it's not going to happen, but there is a way that it's going to happen. And I had so much like conviction and anger that came out with it, that the surgeon actually said, ooh, she's really angry. Like, she's fired up. She might be able to do something with this, because there is that fine line that you're
Yes.
saying, the emotions are power. And if you
Yes.
can take accountability, take ownership of them, and not try to run away from them, you can channel that power. So this is going to be kind of a
I love
comment,
that you were angry. Angry is another huge one that, I mean, worry is one thing. Anger is pretty universally like, this is a villain. We need to get rid of it. I
totally.
love that you used your anger. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. And I think that these are one of the things that we can really become an ownership and balance. This just really ups, all of our leadership ability, really, because we do start to embody our power. So I think that everything that you're sharing is just such a fantastic reminder for the relationship that us as parents, the relationship that we have inside of ourselves and our own comfort levels. Also, I'm just going to throw this in there because I know that comparison, we all do it.
Mm-hmm.
We all think that when we're young, I feel like we think that maybe the comparison will go away at some point in time, but it never does. And I think it actually gets worse, as we get older. And I know
Yeah.
for me that I would keep myself down. I would create a war with myself because I would share, well, so-and-so that is a TED Talk speaker or on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday or whatever it is. Certainly they do not get this nervous. Certainly they do not feel like they're going to pass out. Certainly their brain does not just completely disconnect in the middle of doing something. But now I know most of those people that at one point in time, I was like, oh, that person. And I'm speaking on stages with that person. And it happens for almost every single person that I have ever met. And
Because
for
it's a
me,
natural response.
it's
Right?
natural. And for me,
Yes.
the times that it was the most escalated are the times that I've actually won an award. So there's something to all of this. And I'm sharing this not because of me or to put the limelight on me. I'm sharing this as an example of that these are the normal and natural human things that we go through, the comparisonitis. And then the comparison makes us feel worse. And then we think that that person isn't feeling that. Guys, we're all feeling
Yeah.
the full array
Yes.
of the human
Yes.
emotions.
Yes. Yes. And it's important for kids to know, it's funny that you say that about comparison, because I think we are regularly telling our kids, don't compare yourself to someone else. Well, I think we use it to our convenience. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. But then when we want them to kind of align with some social norms, we're like, well, everyone else is doing that. so it depends. We also put them in systems that are constantly comparing them. We put them in school systems, they're compared by grades, rankings, trophies, they're compared when they're compared constantly. And then we're like, don't compare yourselves. It's the take that I have on comparison is twofold. Number one, I never tell my kids not to compare themselves because I think it's part of, again, the systems that we have set up. But in comparing, can we go from feeling cruddy, right? Feeling jealous, envious, whatever that is, and transform it into inspiration? How do we flip the switch when we are comparing from envy to inspiration? And that's really, I think, where the teaching is. And the second thing, what I loved that you said, that you saw all these speakers and they're going through the same thing is, one key component of self-compassion and being good to ourselves and kind to ourselves is common humanity, is the ability to see. And I think that this pandemic has given us this like no other, right? This ability to see that you're going through a challenge too. Everybody is going through some kind of challenge, and we are all connected in that way. And I think that's so important for kids.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for everyone on the call, can you see the connection between us and our own feelings and our connection with our kids and the connection that they might be having with their own emotions? So thank you. I know that you are all very wise, super intelligent, growth-minded, individuals who are on this call. So thank you for keeping up with us as we're, sharing the nuggets about us and our anxiety, and then kind of going back to our kids. And it's because they can't really be broken apart. They all operate within the same system. So Renee, with role playing, in going through, the trajectory kind of the different ages. So can you take us back to, maybe working with a younger child? Let's just say 0 to, well, you probably know as a child psychologist, you correct me on whatever the age ranges should be. So with the skills of resilience building and role playing with younger kids, let's dive into another example of that and then just continue on through the 0 through 18.
Okay. Yeah. So, I would love to hear if people have a particular example of a worry. Otherwise I can bring some examples to light that, come up often, and then we can go through some techniques and go through some role plays with that. What do you think, Renee? You want me to make one up?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm looking in the chat box right now.
Okay. Awesome.
We have a comment, talk about parenting techniques for children with anxiety by age ranges. Yeah. My daughter worries about failing.
Yes. Perfection.
Worry of the spelling bee. She's a perfectionist. Yes. These, by the way, are all different comments, but they all sound, perfection. We're getting a lot of perfection.
Yeah, perfection. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about perfectionism, and we'll talk about age ranges too. Okay, so perfectionism is a very interesting thing. For a lot of people, when they say perfectionism, there is a little bit of pride, right? Where you're saying, well, I'm kind of a perfectionist, and that has innuendo that I'm a high achiever and I like to do things well. But here's what I know from the perfectionist kids that I work with. They are afraid to be seen with flaws. They are very conscious of how they are judged from the outside. They are very tied to their achievements. Their identity is very tied to their achievements. So what happens with these kids is that they are not seeking what we're talking about when we say the good, healthy perfectionism is actually mastery, where you dive deep and you're gritty and you persevere and you overcome and you're not afraid to fail. That's mastery, right? Perfectionism is different. Perfectionism actually paralyzes kids. It paralyzes them to the point, unless they know they're going to get 100%, they're going to end up first, they're not going to make a mistake, they start to shy away from things. They actually turn away from their goals. They actually become paralyzed, right? This is what happens with kids. Often they have fixed mindsets. So many of you on this call might be familiar with Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and fixed mindset. So how do we help these kids that are so obsessed with being, with this? Okay, so a few things. One is, let's turn to the research for a second. The interesting thing about the research on perfectionism is one of the things that really helps them is self-compassion, right? Research-based self-compassion practices. I'm not talking about woo-woo, like make yourself feel good. I am talking about actually a practice in self-compassion, because these kids are very self-critical. They are extremely hard on themselves. And so we need to teach them the three components of self-compassion: being kind to yourself, talking to yourself like you're your best friend, being mindful of your feelings, so actually experiencing the feelings, feeling your feelings, and then knowing that there's common humanity, right? So with kids that are perfectionists, we need to teach them about self-compassion and about how to practice. You can have them write a letter to themselves in the voice of their best friend. This can be done at various ages. Depending on the age, you can help them with the writing or the drawing. You can role play on this by saying, well, how, if a friend came to you, let me be your friend and I will say the problem, and then your kid is going to advise their friend of the same problem that they are having. And so I would come and say, oh my goodness, I'm so worried about this test that I have tomorrow and I'm totally going to fail. And I don't have enough time to study. And then you are going to ask your child to actually give their friend advice, right? So these are that's one of the techniques that you can use with kids with perfectionism. You also want to help them cultivate a growth mindset, right? So a growth mindset is this idea that the intelligence that we have and the abilities that we have, they're not set in stone, right? It's a belief system. Where I think that we are going wrong with growth mindset is that we are just starting the skill and then we're abandoning it. And I'm going to explain that. A lot of people who are familiar with growth mindset will see these posters all over Pinterest and social media, and they will say things like, just add the word yet to the end of the sentence, I don't know how to do this math problem yet. And they'll hang up these posters, and they're really pretty, actually. There's lots of colorful ones. And it's like, let me just teach my kid to change their language. Growth mindset is a belief, right? It's a mindset. It is the mindset that you think that if you put in effort and you practice, that you'll be able to change your intelligence and your abilities, right? That you are not stuck with the cards that you were dealt when you were born. But so all we do is work really on this language part, right? But here's the thing. If you believe something deeply, let's say, Renee, you believe that you are going to be like great at volleyball, right? You just have this like deep belief. You're like, yeah, that's my belief. But you never practice one day in your life, right? You're going to get on the court and you're going to be terrible. Okay. That's not embodying a growth mindset. So again, coming back to this idea that we're talking about kids that are afraid to fail and they're perfectionists, they often have fixed mindsets where they believe that their intelligence is just fixed. And so most of the time, they're just trying to prove their intelligence and prove their achievement instead of actually learning, right? And so what we need to do with kids to really give them a growth mindset is, great, let's change the language, let's hang up posters, let's get them to believe, but then they actually need to take action. Growth mindset without action is nothing. It's just a belief. That belief is not helping. So what's going to happen to the kid that learned to say, well, I'm not good at math yet? If they don't make any effort, they're going to be not good at math still yet, right? It's not changing.
Ever.
So yeah, I know that I'm trying to pack stuff in, but it's a big question. Perfectionism is a big thing.
Oh, that's great. Noreen, thank you so much for making these notes. Super useful on Zoom. For those of you on the thread, please feel free to scroll back up. Noreen did a great job of outlining pretty much everything that Renee just shared there. Okay, so Alicia says, my son is 17. He has had this response to many things I do. He says he is anxious. He says it's anxiety and sensory issues. He was diagnosed with ASID at age 11. So it's not very noticeable to others, but to me as his parent, it can be horrible at home. I let him know when I am going to vacuum. 98% of the time he screams no. He seemingly demands that he doesn't vacuum. She's just basically saying that he's having a lot of anxiety and that she's kind of feeling abused in the situation with him. Do you have any advice? Because she feels like she's kind of losing this battle with her son.
Yeah, that's really hard. Sensory processing disorder, where your brain is mixing up signals in the different senses, right? And it can come on at a very early age and it can last for a long time. And there are people that specialize in SPD, and they have a lot of exercises that you can do to help kids with sensory processing disorder to really reorient your senses. I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of this call without diving deeper into the personal
Yeah.
history to help with that. But what I can say for you as a parent is that, first of all, you're amazing, right? It's amazing to me. I think we forget how amazing we are. It's amazing to me when a parent will come on a call like this for deep learning because all they want to do is give to their child and ease their pain. So I want you to first start with yourself and realize what's in your control, right? I call it a circle of power. Create a circle, put yourself in the middle, and inside the circle, write all of the things in your power. And outside the circle, write all of the things that are outside of your power. And begin to really own what's in that circle and what's in your power. And even though it's hard because we have such a deep attachment to our kids and a deep attachment to their outcome, you know, and we feel like we're failing basically when it's like, I've tried this and I've tried this and I've tried that, and they don't change, you know? So some of the stuff we need to release. So with, you said two things. You said sensory processing disorder, and then I think was the other one, was it acid reflux? Was it?
No, she just said that he was screaming.
Okay, he was screaming. Yeah. Sensory processing disorder for a long time. So this can be the highly sensitive child, or, you know, now they know it as SPD. I think that the hope is that there's a lot more research in this area now. There are a lot of people that are taking deep dives into sensory processing disorder and how to mitigate and also transform the mixed messaging that's going on within.
Wonderful. And I love the exercise, Renee, that you just shared about putting ourselves in the circle. For those of you who feel really connected to doing that, I know at the end of the calls, I've been sharing what is going to be your implementation for this call. And specifically for these times right now where we are feeling that there is a lot externally that we cannot control. Sometimes just giving your brain that visual reference point and putting your feelings on that sheet of paper in and of itself can be a huge healing process. I'm going to do that today, so that I'm already committing that that's going to be my one takeaway and implementation. Again, you draw a circle, put yourself in the middle, the things that you can control in the middle of the circle, and the things that you cannot control outside of the circle, and let yourself just be present, be with that, breathe through it. And as much as you can, let your nervous system go, you know, from the things that you are not able to control on the outside. Great questions coming in. Thank you, everyone. From Kim. And Kim, thank you for asking this because there were a couple other people in the chat box as well. And I'm assuming probably on Facebook too. Can you talk about helping kids deal with change, such as separation, moving to a new home, new family dynamics, etc.?
Yeah, change is something that we're all dealing with right now, right? Change is a big thing. So separation, it depends on the age of the child, right? Separation anxiety is a natural milestone that actually happens with our kids, and they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8. And so it's something that we can see come and go. I would say if you are dealing with change, as many things that you can keep constant for them, in routine for them, that were actually can be anchors for them. Sometimes all our stuff is gone, right? I actually knew someone who lived in Malibu last year, and in the wildfires, they lost their home. And so one thing that I had recommended to her was creating some routine in the morning, like some basic rituals, right? Something that you can actually manage that is an anchor for your kids, so that they have something that's expected every day, whether that be, oh, we do a mini dance for 2 minutes, you know, or we do some yoga, or we do this thing. Your child wakes up, they're in completely different surroundings, right? Maybe in this situation, a lot of people are homeschooling at this point, right? They're not going to school anymore. So lots and lots of changes. But what can remain constant, right? Separation anxiety can be worked on with exposure. So, you know, for really little kids, one of the things that we recommend is playing hide and seek, where it's like some kids are so attached to to their caregiver that they don't want to leave them even when they go to the bathroom. It's like, how do I get rid of this kid for 2 minutes? You can't. So it's like they just need to see that they can do it. So exposing ourselves to the things that we fear is something that we do regardless of what type of anxiety it is, right? And making really miniature baby goals, mini goals. I think we make these huge goals for ourselves all the time. We don't make these miniature goals. And there's two things that happen with anxiety. Anxiety loves to forget success, right? So your anxiety, Renee, you overcame speaking in some big stage, but the next time you go to speak, your anxiety has completely forgotten that you overcame it last time and you're scared again, right? Or you're feeling the anxiety again. So anxiety likes to forget. So one thing is make these miniature goals so your kid can actually taste some success. So if the big goal is sleeping in your own room, right? Then the mini goal is
Somebody had
okay,
that question, by the way, so thank you.
Okay, so the miniature goal is, I sleep on the floor next to you, then I sleep, then I move out, a chair. So this is like a gradual process. And then you sleep in your own room and I'm in the room next to you, whatever the steps are. And you do each step until your child is not feeling overwhelmed anymore. They're able to do it. And then you have to savor the success. Again, anxiety, bad at savoring. Actually, most brains bad at savoring. We have a huge negativity bias. It takes 15 to 20 seconds to remember something good that happened, or to actually imprint something good happening to us. Otherwise, it just flies out of our brain. We're very concerned about all the bad stuff. So the original question was about separation anxiety, but basically what I'm telling you with any anxiety is do some gradual exposure, make some make a ladder is what we call it, laddering in the Go Zen programs, make a ladder on each rung, make a miniature goal, have them savor some success. And then at the end, when they actually reach their goal, whether that takes 3 days or 3 months, you have to have them document their success themselves. Have them make a video of themselves. Let's say they're afraid to go to sleep at night. Let's say they're afraid to go to the doctor. Let's say they have anxiety over anything. So have your kids, with your permission or with you there, record a video of themselves talking to themselves saying, hey, buddy, you were really scared to go to the doctor, but you worked at it and you did it. And guess what? It wasn't so bad. So that way they can remind themselves, it's themselves talking to themselves that they did it, instead of you as the parent saying, you went to the birthday party. It wasn't so bad. You went out in the thunderstorm, all the things that can cause anxiety for kids. And it wasn't so bad. All right. So I hope that was some tips in there that were helpful.
I love that. I'm going to do that ladder technique. Thank you so much. These are such practical tools that we can put into place immediately, when we get off of the call. So thank you so much. I want to bring this up because I think it's important to share the whole spectrum and extremes of how anxiety might show up in children. Mm-hmm. And if and when it would actually be appropriate for possibly a parent to bring in outside help, for their children, if possibly they are experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome or actually have some real traumas that are being activated. I would love for you to speak into that. And so I'll just touch on this comment here from Emily and Valerie. Thank you so much for sharing. My youngest sees danger everywhere. He controls the fire prevention in a building. One time he didn't sleep all night on a school camp because of safety reasons. He wanted to be sure that his friends would survive the night. I'm having quite a few comments on people saying that their children really perceive danger at very deep levels to the point of closing their eyes and all they're seeing is scary things. Mm-hmm. Is there a line, with all of this? Just talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the more extreme manifestations that kids might be feeling.
If you feel like it is completely disruptive to life, it is disrupting life to the point, and then that's where I say, see if you can find some outside help. I say see if you can find some outside help because for some people it's not affordable, right? It's really, and I don't shy away from talking about that because there is an expense to seeking outside help. But if it's within your means and you feel like life is being disrupted, I'm trying all these techniques, or guess what? Now I'm in quarantine. And again, I just want to I want to talk about these things because it's hard. Now I'm in quarantine. I'm working and I'm teacher homeschooling and, my partner lost his or her job and we're like in a mess and I don't really have time to give my kids, I want to, but psychological help right now because I need psychological help. Maybe all of this stuff is erupting. If you have the means, there are a lot of telehealth services now. People are doing things virtually. There are talk and text services that are a lot more affordable. If you feel like it's disruptive, I would seek additional help for sure.
Yeah.
And so that's the line that I give to people. And of course, I'm not if there's any underlying medical condition, absolutely, go seek advice from the pediatrician. But if you are seeing worry, now I was a huge worrier. I had panic attacks, right? And I wasn't seeking any outside help. I wish I had gone earlier. But again, as I said, when I was growing up, my parents were like, even if we couldn't afford it. So we didn't go. There are lots of things that we can do with our kids on a daily basis to practice skills of resilience, to practice skills of well-being. And I also want people to think about this. We often deal with these issues very directly and head on. My kid is having negative thoughts. How do I get rid of the negative thought? My kid is worried about a thunderstorm. How do I get rid of that worried thought? My kid can't sleep at night because they're having scary dreams. They're closing their eyes and they can't sleep on their own. How do I get rid of that? And we attack each with like such precision, right? So I want us to think in a little bit of a different way. One is there are some underlying beliefs that we can work with kids that will take care of a lot of different worries, right? I talked a little bit about some of them before, that the worst is going to happen, that this is going to last forever, right? There's something that's called the 3 Ps that was proposed by Martin Seligman that really leads to helplessness and depression and anxiety. This idea that things are permanent, right? Again, they last forever, that they're pervasive, that like the one problem that you have in your life is now everything in your life, right? Everything becomes everything. So the kids that say the words everything, the words always, and that they personalize. So they draw blame in. Well, I'm responsible for everything bad going on. And so if we can get them to go from these 3 Ps by recognizing the Ps in their language to being, okay, it's not permanent, it's temporary, right? This too shall pass. It's not pervasive. It's specific to this domain of your life. Maybe you're having a problem with your best friend, and that's specific to your social life. But, your family life is great. So specific. And then externalizing, right? And that doesn't mean pushing blame out. That just means seeing things in a more accurate framework. Renee, what was your original question? Am I going off on a tangent here?
No, I think what you're sharing is absolutely necessary because you're just talking us through how children can continue to be in the experience of anxiety. And I think in this one, you're just delivering that this is another way that you can look into your child and their language to almost get to the root, if you will, of what their anxiety is.
Yes. Do you, so getting underneath is so important, right? Because a lot of this is, I am not enough.
Yeah.
I am not enough. As I am not enough. I need the grades. I need the trophies. I need other things. I need approval, and then I'm enough, right? So this is an underlying issue that causes a lot of grief. It causes a lot of anxiety. The worst is going to happen, underlying belief, right? So we have some underlying beliefs that we really need to dig into.
And as everyone can see on the call, it's such a deep topic. I mean, just take a self-reflection and ask yourself, how much has anxiety and worry been present with me my entire life? And you'll see that to some degree, it's been with you forever, for as long as you've known being on the planet. So I'm just sharing that because there are so many different branches that we can speak to, about anxiety with the 3 Ps. Who can we refer to for that? Do you have this someplace,
I have it someplace. Do you want me to send it to you?
Well, I mean, in your, like on your website, or is it a specific author that you read this from? So that our admin can put it in the notes.
Sure. The 3 Ps, the researcher is Martin Seligman.
Okay. And we'll see if our admin person can put it in there. Cause that's an incredible technique. And also, for everyone on the call and on Facebook, and those of you who will be popping on to see the replay, this is just one of those episodes. Rewind, play again. Rewind, take a note, because you have woven in so many incredible, brilliant ways that we can open up this can of worms, with our kids and start getting in there to the root causes and being able to make some shifts so that they're not feeling the same amount of fear that they may have in the past with some of these big emotions. And also, for us adults as well, just reestablishing or rewiring our own relationship with our emotions. So I want to, yes, not just for kids, exactly. I have 4 notes. I have 4 pages of notes. Yes. I know there's lots of notes, you guys, because there are so many different manifestations that anxiety and worry can take. And so
that's what I'm talking about. I used to by precision help people. Okay, this is the anxiety. Let's talk about this. This is the anxiety. Here's the tool. And tools are amazing. I'm a tool master. GoZen is full of tools, right? I love tools. But unless we get to the underlying issues, those are short-term relief situations, because the anxiety will then travel to another area of life, right? If we're not getting to the root of the issue. And the good thing about trying to get to the roots and really examining the underlying beliefs, well, I'm not enough unless I get all A's, right? That's an underlying belief. That's a big issue that creates a lot of anxiety, that can create the manifestations, or what I call in some of my classes, I call it the lava, the worry lava, right? The stuff that's coming out on top, but it's the stuff that's brewing on the inside that we need to look at.
Do you talk about this in your Superpowered book?
Yes. So Superpowered, you guys.
There we go.
You can get it at getsuperpowered.com. It's on pre-order right now. Yes. You know what? So Penguin Random House reached out to Dr. Shefali and I, and they were like, we want to write a book on anxiety to help kids. And so should we write it from the parents' point of view? And I was like, no, we need to write a book that a kid can pick up and open, and it's going to be visual. It's going to have beautiful art, and it's going to help them directly. So it is literally a self-help book for kids that talks about there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you came into the world with POWER, presence, originality. You came in whole, energized, and resilient. And that's what Superpowered is. And all this book is doing is bringing you back to your natural state of being. That's
and
it.
Is it for all ages?
It's for, it's branded from 8 to 12, but it really is, like, I would say 6 to 15 easy.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to keep digging into questions. I'm going to go to the last minute, guys, with questions because I really want to be of service to you in this call. And there are so many notes, so many different resources here. Just do this episode in bite-sized chunks. You can come back, you can get some more. But there was an important point that someone brought up. What to do if one of the other parents cause anxiety. So I wanted to, Margaret, thank you for bringing this up. And I feel that this goes back to what so many of the our expert authors and masters have shared this week, is about really demonstrating and modeling. How are you showing up with your own anxiety? If you know that maybe their co-parent or the other partner, if they are just living their life in such a way that maybe they aren't fully present or fully accountable or not in a good, healthy relationship with their own anxiety, if you are the parent that can see and witness this, and if you can create being the example, being the embodiment so that your child can see how you are doing your life in the midst of anxiety in a healthy way. Again, kids, I know, Renee, you would probably agree with this too. They absorb more from the way that you're being than the things that you are saying.
Absolutely. So actions speak a zillion times louder than our words, right? I think it's really hard when we're co-parenting with someone who is either not on the same page with us, or we often feel like, oh my goodness, I am creating the anxiety in my kid, or my partner is creating the anxiety in my kid, right? So this again comes back to a few things. One is that circle of control that we talked about earlier. It is super important, while you will do what you can till you're blue in the face to protect your kids from other influences in their life. if it weren't your partner, they might learn it from someone at school, they might learn it from an anxious teacher. There are going to be lots of different factors that contribute to your kid's state of resilience, state of anxiety, right? And so what I want you to really focus on is that there's a huge, massive part of the pie when it comes to resilience that has to do with mindset, that has to do with practices, that has to do with the way that they look at the world, with has to do with things that we can influence, right? And because we spend a lot of time as parents working on and concentrating on the things that we can't influence. You only have so much power to influence your partner, right? To influence the other parent, to influence the other caretakers, to influence the other teachers in their lives, right? To influence the coaches in their lives. You only have so much power. And if we look at the science, what we know is while there is influence from environment, from learned behavior, from parents, right, from there's this familial things, genetics, the biggest piece of the pie when it comes to resilience is still the way that you interpret your challenges. So the biggest piece of the pie is teachable. So, okay, yeah, we can spend a ton of time talking about how you can, modify your partner's behavior. I don't think it's time well spent. I don't. I
Goes
think
back to that
you can.
circle.
Yeah.
Goes back to the circle with you in the middle, and the things that can be controlled. And obviously, attempt to and try to create a conscious conversation, around it as well.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Create a
absolutely.
conscious
But if we've already
conversation.
tried those and if it hasn't worked, then that just might be in the category of not being able to control. Vicky says, my daughter is a very shy, introverted kid, though she is very intelligent, but she gets nervous about facing her teachers and her friends.
Yeah. Social anxiety can be disruptive to our kids' lives. So I think the things that we need to look at are there are kids that are introverted by nature. 40% of the population experiences introversion and they celebrate it, right? It's like, I'm an introvert, that's who I am. If this is who your child is, then there are so many incredible I don't even call it silver linings, so many incredible things to celebrate about introversion. They make the best friends, right? They are known by research to be the most empathetic, the best listeners, right? They're the ones that you want to be friends with. They may have a smaller circle of friends, but they make very deep, meaningful, lasting connections, right? So that is introversion, different than shyness/social anxiety, where it's disruptive to you. You get so nervous that you can't do what you want to do. And so that you are longing for more connection, right? You feel disconnected from your community, from your peers, because you can't get yourself to speak in front of them. So there's a lot of techniques that you can use when it comes to social anxiety. We need to teach our kids really to own their voice inside. I mean, the end goal of this is for them to go back again to their original state of power that they came in with. Most kids come in so incredibly whole, right? That you see them when they get dressed up when they're 2 or 3 years old. They'll wear pajama pants with a ballet tutu with, some like fireman top and a fire. They don't care. They just don't care, right? They're whole. They're like, I don't care what you think of me. I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do. And so when it comes to social anxiety, it is literally not about teaching our kids to dress however they want, like cuckoo birds, right? But it is about getting them to own who they are with their imperfections and show up because they're whole and they're awesome and they're amazing and they need to be able to own that. So that takes some work, right? That takes some work that you're like, yeah, I'm confident in who I am and I'm okay going up and meeting new people. And, so there's the things about like going up and introducing yourself to a crowd that you don't know. That's different than actually feeling it or going and talking to an authority figure like a teacher or someone else in power, right? There are those things, but really we want our kids to be comfortable in their own skin. We want them to be comfortable in their own skin and not feeling every day that they're longing for something, that they're longing for more friendships, that they're longing to, I wish I could be like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that was less technique and more theory, but there are a lot of techniques that we can teach to kids when it comes to social anxiety if that's what your daughter is experiencing.
And Renee, how much with the Go Zen program? Just tell us, maybe walk us through that for just like the next 2 minutes, because we do have a lot of people saying that they love you, they love what you're sharing, they
Oh,
would love to follow
love you
you
guys.
more. And I know that Go Zen is just such a pillar, behind what you're doing. So maybe for the next like 2 minutes or so, just explain to us about Go
Yeah.
Zen, and then people can also go to gozen.com as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. So we have two parts of GoZen. GoZen started by creating animated programs to teach kids skills of resilience. So if your kids are feeling stress, if they're feeling anxiety, or you just want to build their emotional and mental well-being, we have 7 animated programs that speak just to that. There are over 250 animations. You can watch them program by program. You can watch them individually. And so we have 3 different groups of people that are using those programs. We have parents. We have schools. So I mentioned earlier, we have about 2,500 schools that we're working with right now. And we also have therapists. So we have thousands of therapists that use this as a supplement to their work. So kids will come into session and they'll say, okay, watch this video from GoZen, and then let's dive deeper into that. And so we have those animated programs. And about 3 years ago or so, I said, you know what? I've been completely neglecting the parent because I have been honestly healing my inner child with all of these programs. But I started to reach out to people. I'm only one person. I created a lot of the scripting and stuff for the GoZen program. So I started to reach out to other experts and interview them. And now I've done 111 of these interviews, and I grill these experts. So I interview the foremost expert on grit in the world, Angela Duckworth, the foremost expert on procrastination,
Incredible.
Dr. Tim Pitchell. I got the experts of experts, and I grill them in a compassionate way, right? But I ask them, okay, how do we raise gritty kids? What if our kids aren't motivated? What if they really are procrastinators? What do we do? So I created a library of these interviews, and that's also included in the GoZen programming. So we have animated programs for kids, we have interviews, worksheets, and then, I'm a little bit of a street artist. So I'm like, oh, today I'm feeling like we're creating, this. So there's like books in the back end, there's lots of stuff back there. So that's GoZen. So if you go to gozen.com, you can read about that stuff. You can get free resources. And then I also have a masterclass at gozen.com/masterclass if you want to take a deeper dive into some of the things that we talked about today.
Beautiful. I love these resources so much. And Little
Thank you.
Humans, huge supporter of GoZen. I mean,
Thank you.
it's so necessary for each and every one of us on this call. Just rewind and think about if you were able to have rewired your own relationship with your anxiety or with some of these bigger emotions that we have been taught to blame, shame, or criticize within ourselves and other people. Think about how differently your life, might be right now. So I think that everything you share in GoZen is just so applicable. It's so necessary, even especially for these times. And also, guys, her book, thank you. So many people have piped up and said that they have pre-ordered your book
Thank
for
you guys.
Superpowered. So, make sure and get that too. Okay. So I know you guys, I could literally be on. Anxiety is one of my favorite topics as well to discuss, just because I know that people have so much of their own personal power and identity woven in there. Renee Jain, you are amazing. I'm so inspired and can't wait to dive deeper. I feel so supported by what you've dedicated your life and work to. Thank you profoundly.
Thank
That is
you.
from Debbie. Thank you, Renee, again, so much for being here.
Thank
Just remind us
you.
again really quickly, gozen.com, and where else would you like for people to go to follow you?
If you can go to gozen.com and sign up for the free resources, that would be amazing. And also pre-order the book, getsuperpowered.com. And we have some awesome free bonuses right now for pre-ordering. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing this, Renee, and thank you, Mindvalley. Thank you for everyone who joined today. It's just such an incredible honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for showing up with your presence. You have really been so, so helpful during this call. And again, we just love and support all the work that you're putting out in the world. And for those of you who were on our very first call with Dr. Shafali Sabari, also pre-ordering the book is a great support to her as well, since they did co-author this book. I can't believe today is Friday and we're halfway through the live call series. But on Monday, we have one of my other favorite guests, Ria Lala. And we just cannot get enough of her over at Little Humans because her expertise is in emotional resilience, which I think is going to be such an incredible follow-up, Renee, to your call. She's going to dive deep into confidence for teens, including topics like bullying. So, this has been actually one of the most requested topics that we have received whenever we have surveyed the parents from the Little Humans community. So please do pop over on Monday to join us with Ria Lala, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 90-minute live call. Please share this video for everyone on Facebook. Thank you so much, Zoom community, for showing up as usual, asking incredibly wise questions. And I look forward to continue to grow with you guys over the next weeks and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.